Hey guys, Conscious Medium Brandon Ross, thanks so much for all the love and the support for the new Funny You Should Say That. I always do that. It's like mentions my left or my right. Anyways, the book is out. You can get it on Amazon. If you still want an author copy, you can order it. Won't go out till after Christmas because that just got drop shipped today. Gives it a couple of days here. And welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Stream of Consciousness. Guys, thanks so much for joining me. I've got big plans for this. I'm already lining up guests. I decided to make this week just some freeform stuff, and I'm going to be doing a lot of charts. I'm going to be taking a look at what's going on. I'm going to actually take a look at what went on with the January 6th committee tomorrow. I'll take a look at that then. I actually was a little parlayed into this or delayed, whatever. I'll just make up words as I go along. I use big words to make it sound smart. But in a nutshell, I'm just going to say this in summary. The grown-ups have showed up. The grown-ups are like, if you're going to act like a child, this isn't going to work. Speaking of not acting like a child, order my book. It's called Funny You Should Say That. You're going to love it. Click on the link below. It's on Amazon. Brandon Ross, the author. I'm an author. Anyway, so I'm kind of coming in a little lighthearted because I want to actually tackle something today, which is kind of near and dear to my heart. I work with a lot of people over the years that have struggled with depression, talks of suicide. I've known people that have committed suicide. And as a medium, I'm going to give you the perspective about what that looks like. And I'm going to do the promo here and then let it kind of sit in here and do the difference. But I'm going to talk about Twitch, and I'm going to talk about how he passed, how Stephen Boss got himself to that point, and what I'm going to point out to you in his astrological chart is nothing short of chilling. Flat out chilling what he was going through that particular day. He had a lot going for him. He had a lot of, I think like most of us, we were shocked to find out someone that seemed to have it together. He might have been in between gigs, but you don't, when you hit that level, you shouldn't be struggling. You might have to go to work, but you shouldn't be struggling. Sometimes idle hands are not a good thing. Sometimes when people use their physical body as part of their energy, it's also a sign of something else. And that's what's coming up next on today's Stream of Consciousness podcast. Stay with me. All right, hey everybody. I know we've got just a few days before Christmas, and as much as I used to really kind of push gift certificates, that sort of thing, I'm going to do you one more solid. I opened up all of my available dates in January into February. You might have to look a little bit, but I am giving a 1 day, just 1 day. You have exactly 2 days to get this. And by the way, you will not find it after today. This is going to go up tonight. You're going to have 24 hours in order to get it. And it is a heavily discounted. It's half price, a reading with me. You want to pull up astrology? We'll pull up astrology. You want me to bring up your past loved ones? We'll bring up your past loved ones. All you got to do is tell me which way you want me to go. Put in your birth date birth date, time, and location if you want to talk astrology. If you want to connect with your past loved ones, we'll do that as well. I do this like 3 times a year, usually right before Christmas, and I usually do it as like a big email and that sort of thing. Here it is. Here it is. So click on the link below. You'll be brought to a website. It'll specifically say today's 1 day sale. Click on that. You'll see how heavily discounted. I mean, readings with me are $350, and by the way, I don't want for them, but I think it gets busy this time of the year. I've got my people that come to me every year, regularly, every year they get a tune-up, they, talk astrology, what have you. This is kind of like, if you're like on the fence and being like, should I go to this guy or not go to this guy? I have rave reviews all over the place. I have a I've been doing this for 15 years almost. This is your chance to kind of get in. All right, now listen, I want to get to something really super important here, guys. So a 24-hour sale, 1 day sale, half price off. Hope you jump in. Now, this is a really, really important topic to me. We're going to talk about suicide. And what does it look like in an astrological chart? And Stephen Boss, also known as Twitch, is DJ Twitch. It's funny. I know there was kind of a running joke on Ellen that whether or not he was really a DJ or not. He was more of like a dance day. He was a dance jockey. Um, it came to a shock that on December 13th, he passed away. He had committed suicide. And there's a few things that go on with someone that has passed by their own hand. Now, the old arcane way of looking at suicide is that it's selfish, is that it's, it's somebody not wanting to face their problems. There are people that are cowardly. I had a teacher years ago who lost his father to suicide, and he had a big family. He was part of, he had like four or five other siblings. He had a decent sized family. And he viewed it as in his father didn't want to take on the responsibility. That was very old school. And Frank, who was my teacher, I mean, he was 75 when he would say things like that. And this is when I was 20. So this is a long time ago. And the evolution of it is that we begin to kind of identify that there's a mental component to it, that there's something that kind of has to happen. And before I talk about being a medium when I'm presented with suicide versus the astrology, I want to make sure I'm very clear with both of these things. If for whatever reason you ever feel like there are astrological poles in this, and there are things in our life that we go through that you can't just sweep under the carpet. Like, there's not a carpet big enough because you feel like it's bigger than even where you are at in that moment. And for you to be able to reach out to someone, that's why I'm putting the number below for suicide prevention. And it's something that, all right, I'm glad that we're back here. I wanted to point out these numbers here below. Suicide prevention and crisis lifeline is 988 now. It was moved into legislation earlier this year. You can always call 911 as well, but if you're ever in crisis or you're ever in trouble and you just need somebody to talk to, many moons ago, I actually volunteered for a suicide crisis hotline. And I was actually really shocked to find of everybody, and I probably fielded 4 or 5 calls. And I remember there was one woman who was girl. I mean, she's 17, 18 years old. And she had this harrowing tale, and what she was really in trouble with was her circumstances, and she didn't have anybody else to go to. So she was thinking suicide was an option. But of the other couple of phone calls that I took in the handful of shifts that I worked, it was veterans. Every 22 seconds, guys. And you hear a veteran commit suicide, and you think, well, they're a veteran. They saw some things they most humans shouldn't see. They lived the Genghis Khan life, and they're, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and they get pulled into a war zone, and it's not necessarily what they wanted to see, or they signed up for something that they didn't think would ever happen, or they knew it was going to happen. It's still traumatic, right? Well, when you hear a veteran commit suicide, you go down this path of like, okay, I understand how it happened. Stephen Boss doesn't fit that category. Stephen Boss was someone who had his career together. He was not known for being a partier. He was a family man. He was promoting his children. He was promoting his marriage. He was promoting all of the things that you would have thought that somebody successful would do. His smile lit up the room. The way that he talked about things, and he was just a go with the flow, and he knew when to take the lead. He was the perfect dancer in a way, because he knew when to take the lead and he knew when to, defer. And if, and I somebody just mentioned to me that they, with all the celebrity deaths, this is the one that people are talking about. This is the one, first of all, because it's suicide, but more importantly, because this is the one that was completely unexpected. When what's his name, Paul from Fast and Furious, that passed away in the car accident, it kind of had that similar effect where you were like, oh, well, oh gosh, that guy, passed away out of nowhere. Now he might have been reckless driving or whatever the deal, doesn't matter. But he was still at a place in his life where he had everything, right? That's where I kind of akin this to. And those of you that don't know his backstory, I'll give it to you very briefly. He was on a show called So You Think You Could Dance. He's got incredible moves. He was an instructor. He was a teacher. He was kind of like, it was kind of like a voice, contest show where you would go on and you would kind of, do that. Well, Ellen just, she loves pop culture. She loves everything, attached to it. And this isn't a conversation about Ellen. But I put myself in Ellen's shoes for a couple of minutes, and I think about what kind of year she's had. Where Anne Heche, and I know they weren't together, I mean, clearly had a mental breakdown and drove off the rails. Maybe I should take a look at her, but I want to stick with him. We could pull in 20 people that have been, connected to suicide, but I want to focus in on him. This is about Stephen today. But I talk about Ellen because what's surrounding her energetically, and the fallout with her show and the fallout with how she treated people and all this other stuff, it's noteworthy. I don't know what I'm saying yet, but I know it's noteworthy. I know that I'm willing to pay attention to the things that are real in her life, and she's lost two very close people to her. So Ellen, if you watch this, the number's 988. It has total anonymity. People are there for you. Now, Stephen Boss, in his career, again, he's on this really kind of cool show. He dances for a living, and then and strike me if I'm wrong with the backstory on this. He ended up on Ellen's show because Ellen wanted to learn some dance moves, so she hired him. She brought him on as a consultant, and then the DJ thing, and again, this is a part where I'm kind of off the rails on. I heard some like Quipster quote things where in her contract, she had in there, if she ever wanted a DJ, she had that, but she didn't have like a dance instructor to have like an ongoing person. So she's like, guess what? You're a DJ. And I don't know how true that is. I'm kind of piecing it together, but I could totally see that. Like, that's her sense of humor. Like, guess what? You're a DJ. And he's like, I'm not really a DJ, because it was kind of a running joke with the two of them. So I think there's something to that, but that just kind of steps into the type of sense of humor that he had, to be like, yeah, I'll be a DJ. Like, does it pay? Can I show up every day? And trust me, there are some days where if somebody says, Brandon, we'd like you to be our DJ, I'd be like, all right, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can spit a few records. I don't know what that is. But that being said, they started a beautiful long-term relationship, and I'm going to actually put the link below to the Ellen show tribute to him while he was alive. It was in the last week of her show, and it's a beautiful thing. That's actually where I think this picture actually came from. I'm always doing that. This picture came from. It was a highlight from one of her shows. She put together a highlight reel of all the times where he was just a good sense of humor, or he'd be part of the practical joke, or he'd be the one that hid behind the couch and scared people and all that stuff. And there's something to that their chemistry was really good. And I can say this with some personal experience. It's funny when people work together and they have a certain chemistry, everybody automatically, thinks, oh, they're hooking up or, whatever. She's not straight and he's very straight. So there wasn't, what you saw there was a really genuine thing. It's one of the few things in Hollywood where you didn't have to go there. So there was a purity to it. It's one of the few places where there's a purity to that, right? So that was fun to watch. So when the announcement came that he left a suicide note, and I'm not going to get into a suicide note because none of it's corroborated, all of it's speculative. It talked about him being in a very dark place. What I'm about to show you is astrologically why he was in a dark place. But first I want to talk about being a medium and what it's like to read somebody who has committed suicide. It is not uncommon to have someone sit there in a reading, come to me for a reading, where they have lost someone close to them, and it was by the hands of suicide. The reason why you have to kind of get to the bottom of it, And the reason why I'm saying it to you like this is that they literally unpack something. There is that shame metric. There is that still very human thing on the other side where when people pass over, um they don't take with them a lot of their vibrato. They don't bravado rather. They don't bring with them necessarily the pieces that you have that are very human here, unless it's very extreme. Sometimes pride comes through. Sometimes shame comes through. For me in my psychic dictionary, I see certain things that will come through. Things that are um, things that will show me that it was a gun. Things that'll show me that it might have been at the hands of drugs, but they knew what they were doing. Might have been alcohol. Might have been a bridge. Might have been a car wreck. It could have been a lot of different things. And in this moment, when somebody passes over, and let's just say it doesn't matter how they pass, but there's a point of no return. And what people will show me is that moment where they're like, oh, too much. Maybe they've hung themselves. And I'm sorry to just rip the Band-Aid off and talk about these things, but it's important. Maybe the person has hung themselves, and somewhere in between that loss of air and their consciousness fading, they think, oh, what am I doing? Their thoughts literally turn towards the reasons why they should stay. Maybe they're pushing the bullet. Maybe they're pushing the trigger. And before the bullet hits anything important, they're like, but my kids. Maybe before they hit the pavement, they think, I should have just called them. I'm here to share this with you that as a medium, when I connect with someone who has committed suicide, there is almost always regret that they did it that way. Almost always. Now, I don't have responsibility of the family, or I don't have permission from the family to connect with Twitch and do what it is that I do. That's another show. But I can tell you that I've read enough people, after being in this business for as long as I have been and doing 15,000 readings, and I don't think I'm exaggerating at that. I'm here to tell you that I've seen enough and I have enough experiences to know he already regrets his decision. That's not a place for shame. That's not a place for argument. And the family and the team around him, whether it be Ellen or whoever, will spin this in a way to be like, hey, listen, it's 988, it's 911, it's called the suicide prevention hotline. And tell a friend, ask somebody for help. A stranger. I mean, listen, we've gotten pretty good at being strangers, right? And knowing boundaries. Like, we're coming into the age of Aquarius, and we're getting better at that. So those tests should be out there. Reach out to somebody and just say, I just need help. It's that simple. You're going to change the energy of the moment. And before we get into the astrology of it, just know that it's a very real and temporary thing that you go through in these things. It's real, though. It's super real. And right now, you're also seeing, unfortunately, you're going to see more generational. I'm going to point out why generationally that kind of early 40s is a problem right now. I'm going to show you why in a second. Why that challenge is there. You're kind of stuck in between. Like, why am I still responsible? Or why is this not working out the right way? Right? And then there's this dynamic of being able to, he was halfway through a Jupiter return. Halfway through, I'm going to show you some of that too. But as a medium, when you're sitting there with a family member and they've committed suicide, there's something you have to assess. And there's, I've studied this for a long time, and I've taught it. In a cold reading, what you're doing is you're watching the person's reaction and you're giving it back to them. There's some mediumship in this, but it's kind of, it's one of those things that can be taught and then people can, abuse the crap out of it. We don't advise that. But there is something about being connectively aware of what's going on, and basing where you go with a reading is really important. So in other words, you get all this information as a medium. Do I sit there and chastise a person for the suicide, or do I, read them verbatim? Am I giving them sympathy and condolences? Like there is that moment where that part of like what's going on in front of me is really important. And I think that's what makes people a unique. I think that's what makes me a really good medium, is that I can assess that really quickly, and I trust spirit to show me the stuff that I need to get to the message. Well, when you're sitting with a family that is in grief and loss, and I have this family that calls on me once a year, and they have an angelversary party um for this he was the ex-husband of the woman that calls me, and he left behind a 9 and 7-year-old boys, and he chose to go by way of drugs. He was specific about it. He was hell-bent on it. He loved his addiction. He had no problem with it, and he overdosed. He took some stuff he shouldn't have. He knew what he was mixing. Like, it was planned. Let's just say it was planned. And the family wanted me to be angry with the drug dealer. Okay, drug dealer's an asshole. Got it. The family wanted me to say he wanted to come back, and there's aspects of that he did. But the biggest thing that really stuck with me in that moment was his thought pattern as it hit his veins. And that was, oh my God, I got to make it through this, because I got to get back to my boys. It was the only thing that had kept him there that long. And more importantly, it was almost like the only thing that would ever keep him going. And I'm grateful for that family, because they made me develop another level of boundaries to be able to say, no, actually, I know you want me to be angry at this, that, and the other person, and I know you want me to kind of manipulate this to say it so you feel better, which, okay. But spirit was really strong with this group, and I'm like, it's because he couldn't communicate with any of you. The room stopped cold. So when you know somebody that has committed suicide, or is really adamant about it, or goes down that path on a regular basis, look at who you are to that person. Now, this isn't a guilt trip. This isn't meant for you to feel bad about it. It's a way that you can reform what your style, what your technique is. It doesn't bring the person back, but the lesson can't go unnoticed. Just can't go unnoticed. So I want to turn my thoughts here to Twitch, to Stephen Boss and his career and his life, and I want to talk about his astrology. And one of the dynamics that we look at when it comes to how the astrology really works, he's got some really important stuff here. And by the way, I don't know how he got the name Twitch, but I know it was before the platform Twitch came into play. I do think he deserves some royalties for that. Just me. All right, so I want to point out a couple of things here. First of all, I mentioned the Jupiter thing, so I'm going to start there. The inner wheel is Twitch's natal chart. The external wheel is the transit chart of the day that he passed. What I'm about to present to you is his tough energy. It's the challenge in which he was presented with astrologically. And I'm going to tell you, he had a really tough day. I don't mean to go all Daniel Powder on you, but so you had a bad day. This is a bad day. astrologically. And I'm teaching a class, and again, the class link is down below. You can still get a discount on that too. I'm giving the farm away right now. It's about astrological self-care. It's being able to take a look at your chart and know when you're having good days and bad days. This actually comes up a lot. So Jupiter in its cycle, Jupiter returns is essentially a 12-year cycle, give or take, a few months either way. And so just about every 12 years, right? 12, 24, 36, 40, I'm doing math, 48. He was 40, almost 41 years old. He was literally right in the midst of his Jupiter return on opposition. So if you take a look at Jupiter, which is in his 10th house, which by the way is part of the reason why he's famous, Jupiter in the 10th house is about expanding that career. So he's going to be enigmatic. He's going to be awesome. And by the way, let's just talk about his natal chart for 30 seconds. He's got a Sun and a Saturn in the 11th house, right? Mom's your best friend. Libra, easygoing, balanced, right? Yeah, he's got Mercury in there. Yeah, he's got, well, actually, the Mercury kind of goes into the 12th house. We'll talk about that in a second too. But you've got kind of this layout of this enigmatic, popular dude, and you know, Venus is in there as well. It's a super wide conjunct, but that's in Leo, connected to the North Node. We're going to talk about that in a second too, because that's the second aspect to it. But the way that this really lays itself out is, man, oh man, he's just this enigmatic person, and he was born with a Mars and Uranus conjunct in his first house in Scorpio. There's something magical about him. There's something kind of mystical about him. He's a little bit of a rebellion, and oh, by the way, in the second house is Neptune. So he's going to kind of be like, he met his dream person, and by the way, a little unconventional, right? And again, we talk about what's conventional and non-conventional and that sort of thing. And I don't bring up race ever, but you know his background. So that is also sitting there in all of the aspects of his chart, right? He was about 7 to 8 years away from his Chiron return. It doesn't make it play into this day necessarily. I just wanted to give that perspective. Well, Jupiter and being in opposition. And again, we're at 29 degrees with Pisces. We're at 24 degrees in Virgo. Nonetheless, we're in opposition here. When Jupiter is in opposition with itself, now when it does the return and it comes back up, it's a push forward. It's kind of like if you were a swimmer. You're Michael Phelps. You dive into the water. And you get to the edge and you turn around and you push off the wall and you come back the other way. That's a Jupiter return. What happens when you're right in the middle of the water and you start to get a leg cramp? That's Jupiter in opposition. That is where you look at your dynamics, and I've got some notes. I'm sorry, I want to bring up my phone here for a second because I started writing some notes here. Jupiter in opposition turns into something that could really be in conflict, right? And here's my notes on this. Yep, there it is. So you're feeling like you're in this impasse of growth. You're not growing. You're not expanding. You're surviving. So there's a survival technique. And oh, by the way, why is between 40 and 42 where a lot of midlife crises start? Well, there it is, because Jupiter is on the far side of it, right? Jupiter is an opposition. It gets far away. It's not coming back around quite yet, right? So he's got this natural astrological doubt going on, right? He's thinking, I'm not growing, I'm not living, I'm not thriving, right? And by the way, he's also got the square with Mars, with Gemini in retrograde. Come on, guys, how many times are we talking about Mars in retrograde? Mars in retrograde in Gemini is just the most devious devil ever. It just is. It's wrecking havoc. It's the Joker of all positions, right? And it's square. It's near square to both of them. So what does that tell you? He's got this influence of not only self-doubt, but also devious thoughts. But wait, there's more. I want to point out that the moon was moving over his north node. Now, sometime earlier in that day, you take a look at the north node in transit, which is in Leo, over his north node, which is conjunct to Venus. Well, north node conjunct with Venus is I mean, this guy's a lifelong learner. He likes to challenge himself. He understands feminine dynamic. He's going to have a nice balance. By the way, pairs well with a Libra. Let's just say that. But as the moon goes over your north node, one of the things that happens is you have a challenge with that. Now, a Leo moon, and again, he's not a Leo moon, right? Where is he on his moon here? He's actually a Gemini moon, right? So he's all about the love and the fluidity and being able to connect the dots with that. I just want to pull up my my North Node conjunct. This is a very emotional time. This is a time where you may, if you're thinking awesome thoughts and you're trying to expand, you're going to expand. You're going to blow this up. Let's blow the roof off this place. But if you're having crippling self-doubt, it's time to double down. Not only are you hitting with a 16, with a hard 16, you're doubling down on a hard 16. You're taking chances that you're emotionally, whew, plus having that be conjunct with Venus, it's self-love. So he either is expanding it and he and his wife are love bombing, they're having another kid, he's spending his time with his children, he's touring the world, he's traveling, it's in his ninth house here, so it could have been something amazing. It could also be his escape code. That moment where, if the ninth house is travel and the moon goes over it and you're having doubts as to whether or not you should be here, shit just got real, everybody. Leaving his body was the option. His mental status here, so we've built up two things. We've built up Jupiter in opposition, which means he's got this, he feels like he's stuck. It's a very stuck position. Then you have the moon going over the north node that's in conjunct with Venus, and he's having self-doubt, huge self-doubt, or self-grandeur. But in this case, since suicide is the outcome, we're going to go with the self-doubt, right? This last one made me cry. So with Jupiter in opposition, you might feel stuck for a month and a half, right? Jupiter's in, the tail, right there at the tail of Pisces. Jupiter was at the tail of Virgo when he was born. That transition, although a little bit tough, you might feel a little stuck for a little bit. And by the way, when you read your astrological and your horoscopes and that sort of thing, this is the stuff that it talks about, right? This is the stuff of like, you feel a little stuck today. You feel stuck for the next couple of weeks, that sort of thing, where your creative juices might not be 100%. It's still temporary. It's still freaking temporary. It's the longest of all the things I'm pointing out here, but it's still temporary. Then you have the moon moving over the north node. Well, this is like a couple of hours. I mean, honestly, like if you were to go back and listen, I used like 1038, whatever. Oh, and by the way, the time of birth, I full disclosure on this, the time of birth I found somewhere else, but I didn't see it repeated. Maybe I'm repeating it for it. I saw this 954. It's totally uncorroborated. There's no official source on that, but the date and the place are. The things that I'm talking about, though, are not necessarily affected by the time of birth. Just to let you guys know. The date of birth, it would have made a world of difference. The moon is probably the one thing that will make the biggest change. But this moon influence might not necessarily, it might not have happened at 10 o'clock coming over it directly. It might have happened at a different time, but it definitely happened during this day. So just full disclosure on that. So those two things are there. And this is the thing that really got me. Take a look in the second house. You had Neptune in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is prone to addiction. It's prone to escapism. Listen, they're a good time. They're a lot of fun. They want to pick up and go. So the positive traits of Sagittarius is lifelong learner, curiosity, always wanting to see the next thing. The negative side of Sagittarius tends to be addiction or overdoing it. His Neptune in Sagittarius was him being like, I got big dreams. I'm going to make them happen. Then you get the sun moving over it. Now, the sun is in transit, so talk about temporary. This is a matter of a week, a couple of days where it's considered conjunct. So you had a bad day. The sun being conjunct with Neptune in a transit, natal to transit chart like this, is disillusion. It's confusion. It is a moment where you say, I ain't all that. Yeah, but buddy, you were on Ellen. You were on another show. People love you. It's a time to recreate. Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. This position right here in the second house is why he committed suicide. He didn't feel like he was a good husband. He didn't feel like he was a good father. The second house is stability. And he's got Sagittarius in there. He's actually dominated by Capricorn in that, based on what I'm seeing here with Venus anyways, to see how far Venus is away. This probably would have been a dominated Capricorn house. But the sun being over Neptune is a disillusion. It's a moment, this is where you go like, when the rock stars are coming to town and you're like, they're going to call me to fill in for them. It's like Keith Richards is going to like sprain his finger and they're going to ask me to fill in for him. That's fine. I'll fit in. I always thought Rush was going to call me and say, Brandon, how good is your Tom Sawyer? And I was going to say, I could, well, how much time do I have? It's time for the greenies for that one. You need a lot of energy. It's terrible. I'm not promoting drug use. But it's that delusional thing. It's also part of that thing that makes you reach for the dream. It's part of that thing that makes you say, I can go do that. Well, if you're trying to do this hard reality check, and by the way, at about 40 years old, I can speak from personal experience. If you're sitting in a dream world and the bills are still coming in, this is a very real moment. And in the second house, the house of stability, the house of direct partnerships. He's looking at his wife. He's looking at his family. He's looking at the practical side of it. Maybe he doesn't want to have the tough conversation and say, I'm sorry, we can't afford these 3 cars anymore. One of them's got to go. See, I'm a Pisces. I'm a dreamer. So this is tough for me to talk about because I got caught up in this at one point where my dreams were bigger than my dreams never fit my expectations. My expectations never caught up to my dreams. So I've been through this where you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this, this, and this for all these people, and they're going to love me for it, and things are going to be great and everything else. And then reality sits in. And when it does set in, it sits there with you for a minute where it basically says, yeah, you got to get your head out of the clouds. And listen, this happens once a year, right? The sun is going to go over Neptune every single year. By the way, in this class that I'm teaching, I'm going to show you how to find it. So you can be prepared, so you don't get overwhelmed, so you know when to say, guys, I need support in this. I want support for my dreams. I don't want to be in an island and not have anybody to talk to about this. One of the things that I've done very well personally is I've surrounded myself with very practical people, right? Air signs, earth signs, and you got to keep one or two, crazy water signs around, but that's a story for another day. But if you look around and you don't see the crazy water sign, that means you're the crazy water sign, Brandon. But there's a method to the madness of being able to identify this. If tWitch had been prepared with his astrology, he would have actually recognized that he needed to play it really cool, cooler than he already was. He's a cool dude. He was a cool dude. But this was a day where maybe he should have taken a few days for himself. Maybe he should have focused in on his family. This man who was a family man committed suicide before Christmas. His children were everything to him. Now listen, maybe we don't know all of the details. None of us do. And don't ever think that you do. Don't ever think that you will ever understand why somebody commits suicide. You're arrogant and condescending, and you're playing like weekend psychologist, and that's not fair to the person that passed. And it's definitely not fair to the family. Cut it out. Shut up. You're not qualified. But what you can take away from it is to know that astrologically, this man had a really hard day. So what do you do on tough days? Take a day off, go to the movies, go to the things that you love. By the way, he's danced through more days than most of us have ever danced. He's danced through more tough days than most of us have ever danced. I have 2 left feet, and I've left a few toes on the floor, but whatever. This has given me an opportunity, and I hope I'm bringing awareness to everybody, that suicide has astrology to it. And yeah, I could take a look at other examples. I'm not going to do that. I'll tell you what I want to do. I want you to remember him. I want you to be able to take a look at him and think, not that he committed suicide, but that he had a bad day, and that was the result. So when you're having a bad day, it's not permanent. That's the thing about astrology. Jesus. You have the opportunity to wait it out. You have the opportunity to let it pass. I want you to remember this guy here with this. I mean, how Marvin Gaye is that pose? It's beautiful. He's a beautiful man. He meant a lot to his friends and family. He thought he was doing the right thing, and damn it, he had a shitty day. He had a bad day astrologically. He had a bad day in his own head. The trickster was coming through, was pushing on this day and all of these strains. Jupiter in opposition with the trickster Mars in retrograde in Gemini. Bam! That alone is a tough day. Then you got the moon moving over your north node, right? Makes you either be super empowered or super defeated. And then you have the sun in its transit that it does every year at about this time, where he has this crippling self-doubt, and that his dreams aren't worthy. He dreamed of a beautiful family. He got it. He dreamed of becoming a celebrity. He accomplished it. But on this day, it put out his light, and nobody was there to hear it. Know that when you're struggling, please take into consideration that it's astrological. And because of that, it's temporary. It will pass. It will suck for a couple of days, and then it will pass. That's what got me through my days. True story. So you could have it all. You can have everything and have these bad days. And I hope that if, it's the old cliche, if just one person hears this and takes it into consideration, when they talk about somebody that wants to commit suicide and then you say, it will get better. Damn right it will. Those planets are going to move. And by the way, when the planets quit moving, when the sun quits moving, we're fucked anyways. Excuse my French. But you understand what I'm saying. That's why that's such good advice. It does get better. At least it changes. The expectation that it's better is what you need to hear in the moment. But no, it's going to change. It will get better by proxy because you're right in the middle of the pool. You haven't flipped around. You haven't pushed back yet. You'll have another chance. You'll have another opportunity. Will you have to take your lumps with it? Yeah. Okay. Been there, done that. Take your lumps. Move on. We also don't know the unseen forces of somebody in this position. Maybe he did have a tough conversation at home. Maybe his kids said, you know what? You're not my real dad. And you're like, yeah, I am. Like, where do you say that shit? Maybe you have people that are just working out their own stuff on you. Had that happen. But I hope you all understand that all of these unseen forces that we'll never know fully is the idea that even that is temporary. Mars being the trickster is temporary. Moves out of Gemini here in another couple of weeks. Hallelujah. Right? But you understand where this passion of understanding the astrology and doing the education comes from me. Because I'm finding a language in which I can explain it. And again, you can call me woo-woo, you can say it's this, that, and the other thing. You're all still watching. This is resonating on a level. It's unfortunate that it takes the life of someone to do that. Have an open dialogue with the people you care about. Tell them that everything is temporary and that no matter what, you can get through it. Tell them that a medium once told you that nobody commits suicide and doesn't have a regret. They all do. They all regret it. Instantly regret it. Tell them that you can have a safe word, or just tell them that they just need to tell you that they need space or whatever. They just need to talk and be a good person and just listen to them. Don't judge them. Freaking judging people. And then they turn around and then they get on their high horse after they've judged you and tell you how it's about life choices and all that other horse shit. And what they're really doing is they're lecturing and judging you, and then they come off as the teacher of the year. Yeah, I just called somebody out. Thanks for replacing me. Be a safe place for someone. You want to be an angel, you want to change the world, be a safe place for somebody. Just let them talk. You can remind them that it's temporary. You can remind them that today's not the day to make a decision. Today's a day to drink a lot of water, get a good night's sleep. How about that? Because the thing that will happen is time will pass, the planets will move, the effects will change. It does get better. It will get better. Because the astrological weather plays more havoc on us than what we ever have given it credit for. And I'm not doom and gloom. But you got to take the good and take the bad and take them all, and there you have the astrology of life. Did I just make another Facts of Life commentary? Everybody thought it was Blair, but for me, it was Joe. Anyways, so I want to thank you guys for hearing this. And I'm sorry I'm not as funny as I usually am, and I will make fun of all of our politics. I'm going to take a look at the Pluto return for the U.S. and what this means here in the last couple of weeks, and what the January 6th hearing conclusion means for Trump astrologically. I'm going to do some chart comparison with that. I've heard you guys. I get it, and I want my podcast to look like this. I'm going to have more guests coming up in the new year. I really want to thank Elizabeth for being part of the show. Um, Also Judy Weaver, Stetson for coming on. She was amazing, and I'm hearing you guys are raving about her. And of course Jim Lanahan, who um, blew the doors off with people's expectations about what theater thing is. And I wanted to let you know that the guests that I have lining up are in all walks of life. I have people that are connected to. I have comedians, musicians. I have UFO chasers. I have conscious thought leaders. I have some actors, actresses, other talk show hosts, other social media influencers that are interested in coming on. And it's I'm living my dream, but I got to tell you, I got through some of those tough days, and I'll have them again. You'll have them again. I'm just here to tell you that if I had chosen differently, I wouldn't be in a spot where I'm having the time of my life. There it is, everybody. All right, guys. So my heart tap goes out to Stephen Boss's family, everyone who's connected to him, anyone that's grieving this loss. And I want to remind you guys to simply keep going. Why do you think I say keep going? Because if you stop and you really get mired down in this, if you get mired down in all the success, it's called ego. If you get mired down in all the failures, it's called an imposter syndrome, or you can feel defeated. You have an opportunity every day, everyone. Go take advantage of it. So again, the heart tap's going out to the Boss family, everyone that knows him, and I want to remind you guys to simply keep going. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow. Feedback and comments below. I'm going to have all the links, not only to the one-day sale, but then also with to the class as well for the Astrology Self-Care. And I can't wait to see you guys here on the flip side. I've got some exciting stuff here the rest of the week. Hope you guys keep tuning in. I'll see you soon. Keep going.